Princess Lyra stood at the tall window of her chamber and watched the ships arrive. They came from Earth, a small planet she had only read about in old books. The books said humans were weak creatures who lived short lives on a dangerous world. They were not important. They were not special. Yet here they were, coming to save her empire. The Valoran Empire was dying. For 300 years, her people had ruled 3 galaxies. They had beautiful cities that floated in the clouds. They had technology that could bend light and create stars. They lived for thousands of years, and their skin glowed like moonlight. They believed they were the greatest species in the universe. But the Devourer. Swarm did not care about their greatness. The swarm came from the dark spaces between galaxies. They were billions of creatures that moved like a black wave across the stars. They ate everything. Planets, moons, space stations, nothing could stop them. The Valoran armies, so proud and ancient, fell before them like grass before fire. Lyra's father, Emperor Voreth, had tried everything. He sent his greatest generals. He used his most powerful weapons. Nothing worked. The swarm kept coming, closer and closer to their homeworld. Then someone suggested the humans. Lyra remembered laughing when she first heard it. Humans, those small, fragile creatures who died after only 100 years. What could they possibly do against the swarm? But the reports from the outer territories told a different story. Human soldiers had fought the swarm on 3 planets and won. Not with advanced technology. Not with superior numbers. They won because they simply refused to die. So Emperor Voreth made a deal. Humans would send their warriors to help fight the swarm. In return, the Valoran Empire would share territory and trade. And to seal this alliance, there would be a marriage. Princess Lyra, 3rd daughter of the Emperor, would marry a human warrior. Lyra had screamed when she heard. She had begged her father to choose someone else. But the humans had asked for her specifically. They wanted a real princess, not some distant cousin. They wanted proof that the alliance was serious. Now, she watched the human ship land in the palace courtyard. It was an ugly thing, all hard edges and dark metal. Nothing like the elegant. Valoran vessels that moved like birds through the sky. The door opened and the humans walked out. Lyra had expected them to be small, but she was still surprised. They barely reached her shoulder. Their skin was a dull brown color, not glowing at all. They wore heavy armor that looked uncomfortable and crude, and then she saw him. He walked at the front of the group. He was taller than the other humans, though still shorter than her. His face was hard, with scars running across his cheek and jaw. His eyes were dark and cold, like stones at the bottom of a river. He did not smile. He did not look around in wonder at the beautiful palace. He simply walked forward, his back straight, his movements careful and controlled. This was Kang Teho, her future husband. Lyra felt sick. The welcoming ceremony was torture. Lyra stood beside her father as the humans approached the throne. Every Valoran noble bowed when they entered the Emperor's presence. It was tradition. It was respect. The humans did not bow. Teho stopped before the throne and simply nodded his head, a small gesture that might mean anything. The court gasped. Lyra's brother, Prince Keller, stepped forward with anger on his face. "You dare to disrespect our Emperor?" Keller demanded. "Kneel before your betters, human." Teho looked at Keller. His expression did not change. "I kneel to no one," he said. His voice was rough, like rocks grinding together. "My people fought for 1,000 years to stand on their own feet. I will not throw that away." The court erupted in whispers. Lyra waited for her father to punish this rude creature. But Emperor Voreth only smiled, a thin and tired smile. "Let him stand," the Emperor said. "We need warriors, not servants. If he fights as well as he speaks, perhaps we have made the right choice." That night, Lyra could not sleep. She lay in her bed and thought about the human she would marry. He was ugly. He was rude. He smelled strange, like metal and something else she could not name. How could she spend her life with such a creature? She heard the sound sometime after midnight. It was soft, just a whisper of movement outside her door. Lyra sat up in bed, her heart beating fast. The palace guards should be outside. Why would they move so quietly? Her door opened, 7 figures slipped into her room. They wore black armor and carried curved blades that glowed with deadly light. Assassins. They moved toward her bed with silent steps. Lyra opened her mouth to scream, but no sound came out. Fear had frozen her voice, her body, everything. Then the window shattered. Tejo came through the glass like a storm. He had no weapon, no armor, only his bare hands and those cold dark eyes. The assassins turned toward him, surprised. What happened next, Lyra would never forget. Tejo moved. That was the only word for it. He did not run or jump or fight in any way Lyra understood. He simply moved, flowing from one assassin to the next like water over rocks. His hands struck faster than she could see. Bodies fell. One assassin swung his blade at Tejo's head. Tejo stepped aside, grabbed the assassin's arm, and twisted. The crack of breaking bone filled the room. Another assassin attacked from behind. Tejo spun, caught the blade between his palms, and drove his elbow into the attacker's throat. It lasted perhaps 30 seconds. When it was over, 7 assassins lay dead on the floor. Their silver blood pooled around them like spilled moonlight. Tejo stood in the middle of them, breathing slowly. His hands were covered in blood. There was a cut on his arm, deep and bleeding, but he did not seem to notice. He walked to Lyra's bed. "Are you hurt?" he asked. Lyra could not speak. She could only stare at him, at this creature she had thought was weak and primitive. He had killed 7 trained Valoran assassins with his bare hands. 7. In 30 seconds. Tejo said again. "Are you hurt?" "No," she whispered finally. "No, I am not hurt." He nodded and turned to examine the bodies. Guards burst through the door moments later, too late to help. They stared at the scene with wide eyes. One of them ran to call for more help. Lyra watched Tejo as he spoke quietly to the guards, pointing at the assassin's armor, explaining something she could not hear. He was calm. So incredibly calm, as if he had not just done the impossible. She looked at her hands. They were shaking. For the first time since she learned of her engagement, Princess Lyra felt something other than disgust for her future husband. She did not know what to call this feeling yet. It was strange and uncomfortable, like wearing clothes that did not fit, but as Tejo glanced back at her with those dark eyes, checking that she was truly safe, Lyra realized one thing with perfect clarity. She had been very, very wrong about humans. The wedding ceremony happened 3 days after the assassination attempt. It was a grand event, with thousands of guests and flowers that sang when the wind touched them. Lyra wore a dress made of woven starlight. Tejo wore his military uniform. Cleaned and pressed but still carrying the marks of old battles, they stood before the emperor, spoke the ancient words. They were married now, bound together by law and tradition. But Lyra still did not know this human who was now her husband. In the weeks that followed, she began to watch him. Tejo woke every morning before the twin suns rose. Lyra discovered this when she could not sleep one night and walked to her window. In the courtyard below, she saw him training. He ran first. Not a gentle jog, but a brutal sprint that went on until sweat poured from his body. Then he lifted heavy things, stone blocks that would take 2 Valoran guards to carry. He lifted them over and over, his muscles shaking, his breath coming in harsh gasps. After that came the fighting practice. He moved through forms she did not recognize, punching and kicking at invisible enemies. Sometimes another human, a man named Biksu Hyan, would join him. They would fight each other with wooden sticks, striking so fast and hard that Lyra was sure they would hurt themselves. They never did. This training lasted 3 hours every day. "Why do you do that to yourself?" Lyra asked him one morning at breakfast. They ate together now, as married couples were expected to do. Though they rarely spoke, Tejo looked up from his food. He was eating something brown and thick that smelled terrible. Lyra had learned not to ask what human food was made from. "Do what?" he asked. "Trained so hard. It looks painful." Tejo was quiet for a moment. "On Earth," he said finally, "there is a saying, pain is weakness leaving the body. If we do not suffer in training, we will suffer in battle. Better to hurt now, when no one is trying to kill you. But you are already strong, Lyra said. You killed 7 assassins with your hands. There are always stronger enemies. The moment you think you are strong enough, you have already begun to die. Lyra did not understand this. The Valoran people trained, of course, but not like this. Their bodies were fragile compared to humans. They relied on technology and psychic powers, not physical strength. She began to learn more about Earth. The palace library had files on all the species in the known universe. Lyra found the file on humans and read it with new eyes. Earth was classified as a Category 9 death world. This was the highest danger rating possible. The planet had extreme temperatures, going from frozen ice to burning desert. It had earthquakes that broke the ground open. It had storms that destroyed entire cities. It had volcanoes that covered the sky with ash dot, and that was just the planet itself. The animals of Earth were nightmares given flesh. Great cats with claws like knives. Wolves that hunted in packs with terrible intelligence. Bears that could tear through metal. Sharks that ruled the oceans with rows of endless teeth. Snakes with venom that killed in seconds. Even the tiny creatures were deadly. Insects that carried diseases. Bacteria that rotted flesh. Viruses that spread through the air. Humans had evolved on this world. They had no claws, no armor, no venom. They were slow compared to the predators. They were weak compared to the great beasts. By all logic, they should have died out millions of years ago. Instead, they conquered their planet. They killed the predators. They tamed the beasts. They built cities that reached the sky, and then they reached for the stars. Your world sounds horrible, Lyra said to Tejo one evening. They were sitting in the garden, watching the moons rise. How did your people survive? We had no choice, Tejo said. Survival was the only option. Die or adapt. We adapted, but how? You have no natural weapons. No special powers. Tejo tapped his head. We have this. We think. We plan. We work together. And most importantly, he looked at her with those dark eyes. We never give up. No matter how bad things get. No matter how impossible the situation seems, we keep fighting until we win or we die. There is no middle ground for humans. Lyra thought about this for a long time. The court still mocked Tejo. They called him the beast behind his back. They laughed at his scars, his strange food, his rough manners. Valoran nobles would accidentally push him in hallways, spill drinks on his uniform, make cruel jokes that everyone could hear. Tejo never responded. He simply endured, his face like stone. One day, a young servant carrying wine tripped near Tejo and spilled the whole tray on him. The red liquid stained his white shirt. The entire room went silent. Under Valoran law, a servant who damaged a noble's property could be punished severely, even killed. Lyra watched, holding her breath. Tejo looked at the terrified servant. The boy was trembling, tears running down his face. He kept apologizing over and over, bowing so low his head touched the floor. Te-Ho reached down and helped the boy stand. Accidents happen, he said quietly. Be more careful next time. Then he walked away to change his shirt, leaving the court in stunned silence. Later, Lyra found him in their quarters. Why did you spare that servant? Most Valoran lords would have demanded punishment. Why would I hurt him? Tejo seemed genuinely confused. He made a mistake. Mistakes are how we learn. Fear teaches nothing useful, but your honor was insulted. My honor is not so weak that a spilled drink can damage it. Only my own actions can affect my honor, not the actions of others. That night, Lyra fell ill. It was a common Valoran sickness, nothing serious. But it left her weak and feverish, unable to leave her bed. The physicians came and gave her medicine. They said she would recover in a few days. Tahoe stayed with her. He sat in a chair beside her bed, hour after hour. He brought her water when she was thirsty. He put cool cloths on her forehead when the fever rose. He held her hand when the pain became too much. He did not sleep. Not once. For 3 days and 3 nights, he stayed awake, watching over her. On the third day, Lyra woke to find him still there. His eyes were red with exhaustion. His hands trembled from lack of rest. But he was still there. Why? She whispered. Her throat was dry and sore. Why did you stay? Teo looked at her, and for the first time, she saw something soft in his eyes. Something warm. You are my wife, he said simply. I protect what is mine, always. Lyra felt tears run down her cheeks. She did not know why she was crying. Perhaps it was the fever. Perhaps it was something else. She reached out and took his hand. His skin was rough and warm, so different from Valoran hands, which were smooth and cool. Thank you, she said. Tahoe nodded. He did not smile, but his grip on her hand tightened just a little. In that moment, Lyra realized that this scarred human warrior had more honor, more kindness, more love in his heart than any Valoran noble she had ever known. And perhaps, just perhaps, she was beginning to love him too. The alarm came in the middle of the night. Lyra was sleeping when the sirens began to scream. Red lights flashed through the palace. Servants ran through the halls with fear on their faces. Soldiers rushed to their positions. The devourer swarm had reached the inner systems. They were coming for her home world. Lyra ran to the war room, where her father and his generals were gathered around a massive holographic map. The map showed their solar system in blue light. Moving toward them like a dark cloud swallowing the stars was the swarm. How many? Emperor Vorath asked. His voice was calm, but Lyra could see the fear in his eyes. Millions, General Mira answered. She was a tall woman with silver hair and a face marked by centuries of war. Perhaps billions? We cannot count them all. They will reach our outer defenses in 2 days. Can we hold them? The general did not answer. Her silence said everything. Lyra felt cold fear spread through her body. This was it, the end of everything. Her people, her world, her entire civilization. All of it would be consumed by the swarm. They would become nothing but food for the endless hunger. I will lead the defense. Everyone turned. Tahoe stood in the doorway, still wearing his sleep clothes. His hair was messy and his eyes were tired. But his voice was steady and strong. General Mira laughed. It was not a kind sound. You. One human against a billion enemies. This is not the time for jokes. I am not joking. Tahoe walked to the map and studied it carefully. Give me my soldiers and a fast ship. Let me hit them before they reach the main fleet. That is suicide, the general said. Your small force would be destroyed in minutes, perhaps.
Aho.
Pointed at the map. But I see 3 weak points in their formation. Hive nodes. Kill those, and the swarm loses coordination. They become stupid, confused. Easy targets for your big guns. General Mira stared at him. You saw that in 10 seconds? We have been studying this formation for hours. I see weakness, Tahoe said. It is what I do. Emperor Vorath stood slowly. He looked old, so old and tired. The weight of his dying empire pressed down on his shoulders like physical pain. Let him try, the emperor said. What do we have to lose? 2 hours later, Lyra stood in the landing bay and watched the human ships prepare to launch. They were small vessels, fast and agile, carrying only 30 human soldiers. Against billions of swarm creatures, Tahoe was checking his weapons when Lyra approached him. She did not know what to say. She did not know how to tell him what she was feeling. You will die out there, she said finally. Tahoe looked at her. For a moment, something flickered in his eyes. Something warm and sad. Maybe, maybe not. Humans have survived worse odds. Have you? Many times. He smiled, just a little. It was the first time she had seen him smile. I always come back. I promise you, Lyra, I will come back. He said her name. Not princess, not wife, just Lyra. It made her heart ache in a way she did not understand. I will hold you to that promise, she whispered. Tahoe nodded. Then he turned and walked to his ship. The bay doors opened. The human vessels flew out into the darkness of space. Lyra went to the command center and watched. The main view screen showed the battle in real time. She could see the swarm, a massive darkness that blocked out the stars. She could see the Valoran fleet, thousands of ships forming a defensive line. And she could see the tiny human vessels, so small they were almost invisible, flying straight toward the enemy. "They are insane," General Mira muttered. "Absolutely insane." The first human ship reached the swarm. Instead of attacking directly, it flew around the edges, using asteroids and debris as cover. The swarm tried to catch them, but the humans were too fast, too unpredictable. They moved in patterns that made no sense, that followed no strategy the Valorans had ever seen. "What are they doing?" the general asked. Lyra understood. Hunting. The humans were not fighting like soldiers. They were fighting like predators. They were patient. They were clever. They waited for the perfect moment and struck with deadly precision. The first hive node exploded. On the screen, Lyra saw a section of the swarm go dark. Thousands of creatures stopped moving, confused, lost without their controller. The Valoran ships fired into the gap, destroying them easily. "One node down," came Tejo's voice over the communication system. Moving to the second. Hours passed. The battle raged. Human ships were hit, damaged, some destroyed. But the survivors kept fighting. They did not retreat. They did not hesitate. They pushed deeper and deeper into the swarm, hunting the hive nodes with terrifying focus. The second node fell, then the third, with each node destroyed. The swarm became weaker. The coordinated attack became chaos. The Valoran fleet, finally able to fight back effectively, poured fire into the confused enemy. The battle lasted 3 days. Lyra did not leave the command center. She did not eat. She did not sleep. She watched the screen, searching for Tejo's ship among the explosions and destruction. Sometimes she heard his voice, giving orders, reporting kills, encouraging his soldiers. Sometimes there was only static. On the third day, the swarm retreated. Lyra could not believe it. The Valoran court could not believe it. General Myra stood frozen, staring at the screen as the dark cloud pulled back, leaving dead creatures floating in space like black snow. "We won," someone whispered. "We actually won." The human ships returned. Only 12 remained out of 30. They flew slowly, damaged and broken, held together by desperate repairs and stubborn will. But they flew. Lyra ran to the landing bay. Tejo's ship was the last to land. It came in crooked, one engine destroyed, hull covered in burns and holes. The door opened with a grinding sound, and Tejo stepped out. He looked terrible. His armor was cracked and stained with black blood. There were wounds on his face, his arms, his chest. He moved with a limp, every step clearly causing him pain. But he was alive. Lyra forgot that she was a princess. She forgot that she was in a room full of people. She forgot everything except the man standing in front of her. She ran to him and threw her arms around his neck. "You came back," she said, against his shoulder. Tears were streaming down her face. "You promised, and you came back." Tejo's arms wrapped around her, holding her tight. He was shaking, she realized. Even this impossibly strong human was shaking with exhaustion. "I always keep my promises," he whispered. Then his legs gave out, and he collapsed. Lyra caught him. He was heavy, so much heavier than he looked. But she held him, lowering him gently to the ground. "Help," she screamed. "Someone help him." Doctors rushed forward. Soldiers gathered around. General Myra stood watching, her face unreadable. As they carried Tejo away, Lyra walked beside him, holding his hand. She did not care who saw. She did not care what they thought. This human had done the impossible. He had saved her world. He had kept his promise. And she loved him. She loved him with every part of her being. She would not let him go. Not now. Not ever. Tejo recovered slowly. The doctors said any Valoran would have died from his wounds. He had lost so much blood. He had broken bones in places the doctors did not know could break. His body was more scar than skin, but humans were different. Their bodies healed faster than any species the doctors had ever seen. Within 2 weeks, Taeho was walking again. Within a month, he was training in the courtyard like nothing had happened. The Valoran Empire celebrated their victory. For the first time in 50 years, they had pushed back the swarm. Hope spread through the galaxy. It's like sunlight after a storm. But not everyone was happy. Prince Keller watched the celebrations from the shadows. He saw how the people cheered for the human soldiers. He saw how the nobles who once mocked Taeho now bowed to him with respect. He saw how his sister, Princess Lyra, looked at her human husband with love in her eyes. It made him sick. Keller had always believed in Valoran superiority. His people had ruled the stars for thousands of years. They were beautiful and powerful and eternal. Humans were nothing. They were insects. They should be servants, not saviors. But now everyone called Taeho a hero. They called him the Ghost of Orion, the man who broke the swarm. Some even whispered that he was the greatest warrior in the Empire, a human. The greatest warrior. It was an insult to everything Keller believed, so he made a plan. The diplomatic summit was held in the Great Hall of the palace. Representatives from 100 worlds had come too. Discussed the alliance between the Valoran Empire and Earth. It was supposed to be a celebration of unity. Kaelor turned it into a trap. I have evidence, he announced. Standing before the gathered crowd, that the humans have betrayed us. Its silence fell over the hall. Lyra, sitting beside Taeho on the royal platform, felt her blood turn cold. What evidence? Emperor Voroth asked. His voice was careful, controlled. Keller held up a data crystal. Communications between human commanders and the Devourer swarm. The humans did not defeat the swarm. They made a deal with them. They sacrificed Valoran lives to gain our trust, all while planning to hand our worlds over to the enemy. The hall erupted in angry voices. Valoran nobles shouted accusations. Human diplomats tried to protest. Soldiers reached for their weapons. Lyra looked at Taeho. His face was stone, but she could see the tension in his jaw, the way his hands gripped the arms of his chair. This is a lie, Taeho said. His voice was quiet, but somehow everyone heard it. I do not speak with monsters. I kill them. Of course you deny it. Keller smiled, a cold and cruel smile. But the evidence is clear. Guards, arrest the human traitors. Armed soldiers moved toward Taeho and his men. Sahayan, standing with the other human soldiers, put his hand on his weapon. The humans were ready to fight, Lyra said. She stood, her voice ringing through the hall. I want to see this evidence. Keller's smile flickered. Sister, you have been deceived by this creature. Your judgment cannot be trusted. I am a princess of the Empire. I have the right to examine evidence before judgment is passed. For a moment, Keller hesitated. Then he handed the data crystal to a technician. The communications appeared on the great screen above them. Lyra studied them carefully. Her heart was pounding, but her mind was clear. She had spent weeks learning about human technology, human writing, human ways. She knew what real human communications looked like. These were fake. The language was wrong. The codes were wrong. The timestamps showed dates when Taeho had been in the hospital, unconscious from his wounds. It was a forgery, and a clumsy one. Lyra faced the crowd. My brother lies. Gasps echoed through the hall. Keller's face turned pale, then red with rage. Examined this evidence, Lyra continued. It is false. The communications were created by someone who does not understand human protocols. The dates are wrong. The codes are wrong. This is not proof of treachery. It is proof of conspiracy. She pointed at her brother. Keller tried to kill me on my wedding night. He sent assassins to my chamber. My husband saved my life that night. Now he tries to destroy the alliance that saved our empire. I do not know what hatred drives him, but I will not let him destroy the one man who has shown us what true courage means. The hall was silent. Everyone stared at the princess who had just accused her own brother of attempted murder and treason. Keller's face twisted with fury. You choose a beast over your own family? Over your own blood? I choose the truth over lies. I choose honor over hatred. Keller reached into his robe and pulled out a small weapon. It was a pulse gun, small but deadly. He pointed it at Lyra. Then you will die with your precious human. Everything happened at once. Keller fired. The pulse of energy shot across the hall, burning the air as it flew toward Lyra. There was no time to run, no time to dodge, no time for anything. Tejo moved. He threw himself between Lyra and the blast. The energy struck him in the chest, burning through his armor into his body. He staggered, but did not fall, and then he walked. Step by step, Tejo advanced toward Keller. Blood poured from the wound in his chest. His legs shook. His face was pale with pain, but he kept walking, his eyes locked on the prince. Keller fired again. The blast hit Tejo's shoulder. He stumbled, but continued forward. Again, a hit to the leg. Tejo dropped to one knee, then stood again. The crowd watched in horror and amazement. No creature should be able to take such damage and keep moving. No creature should have such will, but humans were different. Tejo reached Keller. The prince's weapon clicked empty. He scrambled backward, terror on his face. Tejo grabbed him by the throat and lifted him off the ground. His grip was iron despite his wounds. His dark eyes burned with something ancient and terrible. I do not kill family, Tejo said softly, but threaten her again, and I will forget that. He released Keller, who collapsed to the floor. Gasping for air, then Tejo turned to Lyra. He tried to smile. It's still keeping my promises, he whispered, and then he fell. Lyra caught him before he hit the ground. His blood soaked her dress, warm and red, so different from Valoran silver. She held him tight, screaming for doctors, screaming for help. Emperor Voreth rose from his throne. His face was hard as he looked down at his son. Keller is guilty of treason and attempted murder. He is exiled from this empire, never to return. The alliance with humanity stands. Guards dragged the screaming prince away. Doctors rushed to Tejo, lifting him onto a stretcher. Lyra held his hand as they carried him to the medical wing. His grip was weak, so weak. Please, Tejo. Please stay with me. His eyes fluttered open. Even now, broken and bleeding, he looked at her with warmth. I am not going anywhere, he breathed. Humans do not die easily. The doctors worked through the night. Lyra waited outside, covered in her husband's blood, praying to gods she had never believed in. When the sun rose, the doctor came out. He will live, she said. I do not know how, but he will live. Lyra wept with relief, and she made a promise to herself. She would never let anyone hurt him again. She would stand beside him, fight beside him, love him until the end of time. He was her husband, her warrior, her human, and she was proud. The months that followed changed everything. Tejo recovered, though it took longer this time. The wounds from Keller's weapon left new scars on his body, joining the old ones like chapters in a book of survival. He spent weeks in bed, sleeping and healing. While Lyra sat beside him and watched, she had never watched anyone sleep before. Valorans did not do such things. It was considered strange, almost improper. But Lyra did not care any more about what was proper. She watched the way his chest rose and fell with each breath. She watched the way his face relaxed in sleep, losing the hard edge it always carried when he was awake. She watched, and she loved him, and she was not ashamed. While Tejo healed, the war continued. More human soldiers arrived from Earth, thousands of them, then millions. They came in their ugly metal ships with their strange weapons and their impossible determination. They came to fight, to die, to save a universe that had once looked down on them. General Mira, who had laughed at Tejo when he first arrived, now studied human tactics like a student studying ancient texts. She learned their ways. She adapted them for Valoran soldiers. Slowly, the Empire began to fight differently. They stopped relying on perfect strategies and superior technology. They started using the environment as a weapon. They learned to improvise, to adapt, to never give up, even when defeat seemed certain. They learned to fight like humans. The swarm, which had seemed unstoppable, began to falter. Battle after battle, they were pushed back. Systems that had been lost were reclaimed. Planets that had been eaten were avenged. Victory was no longer a dream. It was becoming real. Lyra changed too. She started training with the human soldiers. At first, they were hesitant. She was a princess, delicate and precious. But she insisted, and they could not refuse. Suhian became her teacher. He was patient but demanding, just like Teho. He taught her to fight with her body, not just her mind. He taught her to push through pain, through exhaustion, through fear. "You are stronger than you think," he told her one day, after she had completed a training session that left her gasping on the floor. All beings are. They just need to find it. Lyra found it. She was not a warrior. Her body was too fragile, her reflexes too slow. But she developed a toughness she had never known before, a strength of will that surprised everyone, including herself. When Teho finally returned to training, he found his wife waiting for him in the courtyard. She wore training clothes instead of royal gowns. Her hair was tied back for fighting instead of styled for beauty. "What is this?" he asked, a smile playing at the corner of his mouth. "I am your partner," Lyra said, "in everything. If you fight, I fight. If you suffer, I suffer. I will not sit safely behind walls while you risk your life." Teho looked at her for a long moment. Then he nodded. "Show me what you have learned." They trained together every morning after that. Lyra was never as fast or as strong as Teho, but she improved. Day by day, week by week, she became something new. Not a Valoran princess. Not a human warrior. Something in between. Something stronger. The final battle came in the third year of the war. The swarm had retreated to their original territory, a dark cluster of dead stars at the edge of the universe. The combined fleets of the Valoran Empire and Earth gathered for the final assault. Millions of ships, billions of soldiers, all united for one purpose: to end the swarm forever. Teho led the human forces. Lyra stood beside him on the bridge of the flagship, watching the enemy on the view screen. The swarm was still massive, still terrifying. But they had beaten it before. They would beat it again. "Are you afraid?" Teho asked quietly, so only she could hear. Lyra considered the question. A year ago, she would have been paralyzed with fear. Now she felt something different. Not confidence exactly, but readiness. "No," she said. "I am not afraid. I am with you." Teho took her hand. His grip was warm and strong. "Then we have already won." The battle was brutal. It lasted for days, a storm of fire and death that stretched across the darkness between stars. Ships exploded. Soldiers died. The cost was terrible. But humans did not surrender. Valorans did not surrender. Together they pushed into the heart of the swarm and found the queen, the ancient intelligence that controlled everything. Teho led the final assault personally. With Suhian and a small team of humans and Valorans, he boarded the queen's vessel and fought his way to her chamber. Lyra watched on the screen as they disappeared into the enemy ship. She waited, her heart frozen, her breath stopped. An hour passed. Then two. Then the swarm stopped. All across the battlefield, the creatures went still. Their coordinated attacks became chaos. Their endless hunger became confusion. Teho's voice came over the communication system. "The queen is dead. Mission complete." The cheering was so loud that Lyra could not hear her own thoughts. She did not care. She was already running to the shuttle bay. When Teho's shuttle landed, Lyra was the first one there. The door opened and he stepped out, covered in blood and dirt and the remains of their enemies. He looked exhausted. He looked ancient. He looked beautiful. Lyra ran to him and kissed him, right there in front of everyone. Her father, the generals, the soldiers, the cameras broadcasting to billions of viewers across the galaxy. She did not care. Te-Ho held her tight and kissed her back. 1 year later, on the anniversary of the war's end, Lyra and Teho stood on the balcony of the Imperial Palace. Below them, the city celebrated with lights and music. Above them, the twin suns were setting, painting the sky in colors of gold and red. "I hated you once," Lyra said softly. "When you first arrived, I thought you were beneath me. I thought humans were beasts." Tejo looked at her. His face was calm, peaceful. "I know," he said. "I was wrong. I was so terribly wrong. You were afraid. Fear makes fools of everyone. What matters is what you do when the fear passes." Lyra moved closer to him, resting her head against his shoulder, his arm wrapped around her, warm and strong. "What do humans do?" she asked. "When the fear passes?" Tejo was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was soft. "We endure. We adapt. We love with all our hearts. And we never, ever give up. No matter how dark things get. No matter how impossible it seems. We keep fighting. We keep hoping. We keep living." Lyra looked up at him. His dark eyes were gentle now, filled with something she had never expected to see in a warrior. Love, pure and endless love. "I am glad," she said. "I am so glad I was wrong about humans." Tejo smiled, a real smile that lit up his scarred face. "And I am glad," he said, "that you gave me a chance to prove it." They stood together as the sun set and the stars came out, the princess and the warrior, the alien and the human, two beings from different worlds who had found something precious in each other. Lyra had been astonished on the day she met her husband. She had been astonished by his strength, his courage, his impossible will to survive. Now she was astonished by something else. She was astonished by how much she loved him, and she knew, with perfect certainty, that she would love him until the end of time.